البداية الملهمة الحماسية نواصل رحلتنا في عالم الكوتشنج مع جلسة بعنوان القيادة بالحضور في عصر التحول، تقدمها مس جانيت هارفي.
This is what I'm supposed to talk about, but I think you just had a master class in it. Thank you so much. What a gift to be in the presence of this culture and have it go all the way through my body. I couldn't have asked for a better way to begin. Thank you. You know, I was here in 2014, and I had no idea what I was doing. I got a phone call that said, we're doing a conference in the Middle East, and we couldn't think of anybody better to come and talk about the core competencies. I called Magda, and I'm like, seriously? And they want me to do it for 2.5 hours. I did do it for 2.5 hours with a break for prayer in the middle. And they all stood up at the end. I'm like, what are you standing up for? These are so boring. But I gotta tell you, I have found such joy in the core competencies. When I first saw them, this is a little true confessions, I looked at the words on the page and I said, what's the big deal? I'd been a corporate executive for 14 years. I had done huge, large-scale change initiatives. I knew what it took to get people activated and motivated and ready to go. Nah, I don't need these core competencies. But I was wise enough to realize that when my voice of judgment was up, something was up. And I did 3 certification programs in the space of 18 months. And then I bought a coaching education company. Yeah, that tells you a little bit about me. I have learned how to be an A student and then some. But in the process, I recognized that achievement wasn't everything. So thank you to ICF Saudi, Abdel Sattar, our conversations, the opportunity to be in dialogue about this work and this dream you've manifested. Grateful, very grateful. Yes, congratulations. So everybody in this room is a leader. Might be my first provocation because you maybe don't think you are. But every morning you get up and you have your routines, whatever those are, and that is an act of self-leadership. So this talk is titled Beyond Authority because what's true is, as a leader in an organization, whether it's government or nonprofit or profit or you run an entrepreneurial business, you are leading self and others in every breath. And you might think you know something about authority, and you do. You might even know something about personal authority, something I call the power to choose how you will relate to your life. The power of choice is what we're instilling in every conversation we have. As leader, as coach, as educator, it doesn't matter. That's a state I call sovereignty. And when we do that from a congruence and alignment with our value system, we will always have integrity, and we know that's a source of agility. But the problem is that we often end up talking about values and purpose and vision up here in the clouds. So my call to action for you this morning, ground it. Practical, pragmatic. I'll probably say some things in this short 30 minutes with you that you're going to go, huh? And you might even disagree. That's good. Let yourself be challenged because growth requires those moments of tension. If you let yourself be present in the moment the tension arises, you will find the seed of innovation. And so that's where we're going. Are you ready? Ready to dive in? Okay. This question, what is the most important aspect of any interaction you have in your daily lives? Notice that I gave you plenty of pause. And I don't think it was more than 2 seconds and somebody couldn't help themselves but speak. When's the last time you let yourself be quiet for 10 seconds and be with your own thoughts? This is what we do when we sit in the presence of a leader who's challenged by something, who's feeling deeply and has no place to express it. If you cannot be comfortable in your own silence, you will not be able to provide that to your clients. This is what presence is all about in the coaching paradigm. All your answers were great, and I'm sure more will come. Be with this question. Those of you that didn't speak, notice what surfaced in the silence. Maybe you felt uncomfortable. Maybe you were wondering, am I supposed to say something or not say something? I don't know. You got hijacked from being available to the moment right in front of you. It's not that you got hijacked that should get your attention. It's the curiosity that comes with that that says, how come? How come that was hard for me? So, as you think about yesterday, oh my gosh, what a rich expression of where this culture is in the journey of coaching and leadership and transformation. What caught your attention? Did you spend time last night journaling? Did you get up this morning in meditation and consider, what did I take into my body? What am I allowing myself now to open my thinking, my perceiving, my sensing, my intuiting from something from yesterday? Because if there isn't a single thing, ask yourself, was I present yesterday? And how could I be even more present today? So the question of presence, I've had this conversation 4 times this morning already about what's the difference between PCC and MCC coaching. I get it probably, 10 times a week. It is not PCC plus, it's not doing the skills better and stronger and more. It is an utterly transformative shift in the way that you experience the world. It is not an I orientation. It is a we orientation. Can I be perceiving of all that is occurring beyond my own biases and assumptions, habits and preferences? Can I allow myself to be in the experience of somebody else's expression, as we just did with the beautiful singing and prayer? These are choices we make deliberately or not, as the case may be, and find ourselves caught in a current and then realize, I have no idea what I'm about to just say. The question is, can you notice what state of being you are in? Because this is wholeness. It's not the action. It's the place from within you that you are called to act and the stance that you choose to take. One of those conversations I was having was about someone who wasn't ready to be allowed to make their own declaration of the insight that came from their session. That as coach, if you make that decision, you've stopped coaching. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't people who need a little help along the way. But the only way I know that is if I can perceive their discomfort. I don't need to perceive their smartness. I need to know what they're embodying. So I'm offering this little story to say, notice your embodiment today. Notice where you get uncomfortable. Notice where you're elated. Notice what brings the laughter forward. These are all the micro skills of presence. So, what does your choice tell you? What does it tell you? What does it reveal to you as the most important part of how you show up, how you engage? Even in coaching mindset, there is a specific skill about mentally and emotionally preparing for sessions. What do you do? I often hear coaches say to me, well, I light a candle, I get a glass of water, I go to the bathroom and make sure that I'm going to be settled. I make sure that I turn my phone ringer off. These are all good practical things. How do you get your spirit ready to receive another human being? It's a whole other level of presence. Okay. I'm not going to go here today, but I want to give you a little bit of context about the work, the body of work that I've been doing, which is called Generative Wholeness. In 2007, I had a CEO I was sitting with that I'd been working with for about, maybe 6 years. And I asked him, I said, what do you think the secret is behind your ability to consistently produce results, even when there's dramatic change going on in your industry and in this organization, some of which you create? He laughed. And he said, I have absolutely no idea. I was kind of surprised. I sort of looked at him and said, have you never really thought about what creates your success? And he said, no, I'm too busy. I'm too busy doing. Well, the scientist in me said, there's something to be learned here. So it took me on a journey of interviewing another 249. And this is what came out of it. And the piece I want to call attention to for this talk is learning. We heard it a little bit yesterday. But when was the last time you put yourself in a position where you were completely out of your element? You had no idea anything about the content that you were learning. This is what sustaining excellence means for leadership. These are all people who realize that unless I step out of what's comfortable and familiar and is my expertise, I will never be innovative. I have to put myself in the place of best potential, which is outside of what is known. That's a lesson in presence too, by the way. And ultimately what they said was, that's where my ideas come from. When I'm not in my element, I begin to see patterns. I see opportunities that I wouldn't see if I stayed in what was comfortable and familiar. That's original thinking. But the challenge then is, this has been my nemesis my entire career, I have way too many ideas, and I used to give them all to my team. And they said, okay, stop. Which one? Which one can we work on today? And I started to realize I had to find other places to have those ideation conversations so I could distill my own thinking. This is what these leaders also did very well. And then they brought one or two and they gave it to the team. This is where I started to see the shift from I orientation to we orientation. That if you're going to lift up and grow an organization, you have to scale. To scale, you have to let go of authority. You have to be willing to allow someone else to take the seed of that idea and let it bloom. And you can't force that bloom. But as a leader, you can create the conditions for people to, I could water. I could put a little water here. I could put some fertilizer in the soil. Oh, you know what? If we got a black light, it would work even in the night. I give you the metaphor because Harvard professor Dr. Ruth Wageman, anybody know Ruth's work? So she's dedicated her entire life to human design. And she's worked primarily with executive teams. And she has a wonderful quote that says, we cannot make teams great. We cannot make teams great. Hear this in your coaching. You cannot make your leaders be awesome. They already are. But what we can do is help them to think about how they show up, how they interact, how they make decisions. This is mindset. This work of presence is about your mindset. And ultimately what she said is, our work is about nourishing the soil, preventing disease, and removing obstacles. It's a really good formula for leadership, don't you think? It is for coaching too. All right. I think there are 3 essential traits to presence as a leader. The first is humility. When a leader can finally be in the joy of I don't know, I love it. I love it when my team asks me a question and I have no clue how to answer. And they've learned to manipulate me a little bit when they have an agenda. But you know what? That's great, because scaling requires that I'm making the space for them to step into the void that I leave. When leaders say to me, "Why won't my teams do X?" Well, it reminds me of a CEO I was working with. He hired me to exit. He was bored. He'd been in the organization 21 years. He's like, "I think I'm done." And he started to tell me a story in the second session I was with him, and he said, "I write these amazing white papers, and I give them to the team the day before our meeting, and there's no conversation." You know where the story is going, right? He stopped writing white papers. And instead, we began to work on what are the deeper, provocative, strategic questions that you sit with, that your response to the question is to write the white paper. And I said, "That's your job. Ask those questions, one at a time." Not all 10 in the same meeting. We were about 7 weeks in, and he said, "I don't know if we should cancel this contract or not, but I don't want to leave." He discovered that he had an incredible team in front of him, and they were ready for what he was writing about, but they had to own it, had to be theirs, and they needed his presence to be able to make the declaration of that North Star that he could see, and then get out of the way and let them stand up. So humility, it took courage for him to let go of being the smartest person in the room. Lots of smart people in the room. And yes, presence. Now, everybody says to me, presence is this amorphous thing, right? So what are the micro skills? The first is noticing. That's what I just took you through. The second, of course, is connect. I heard that come up in the room in the answer to the first question. That's right. I said it to you yesterday. Core human DNA. Two things. Connection to all that is, and growth. The minute the baby comes out, what do? Cut the umbilical cord and put it on the parent's body. We look for this all of our lives. We look for that quality of connection. And a leader who remembers this first will create readiness for whatever amazing idea you want to bring forward. Because we take our first breath as a baby and we keep breathing. That's about growing until we're not breathing anymore. Connection and growth. I know they're in the background, but these are real. If you can remember that formula, you will always have motivation. So it's a skill to practice, and it has a few prerequisites. I don't know if I left one off, but these are 4 reasons why we don't. How many of you followed Deloitte's well-being study? Anybody in the room? And at the end of 2024, they reported that 95% of leaders believe that their employees would say they deeply care. What do you think the employee number was? It was less than 95, for sure. It was 50%. That's a leadership gap. Now, we point to these things. Left one off. We point to these things because that's observable and measurable. But that's not what's going on. Satya Nadella at Microsoft had been in the organization for more than a decade under Steve Ballmer's leadership. He had been in the trenches when internal competition was draining their talent. And they were at each other. Their engagement scores were even worse than the 79% of disengagement we have today, which is really scary. Cost us a lot of money, too. But Satya came in and he said, we must change our culture. We must change how we show up and who we are being. Model, coach, and care. That was the saying. And it is to this day. Are they out of the woods yet? Nope. Because culture isn't something that you just write on a piece of paper and manifest. It's in the small acts of presence every day that culture emerges. It's a little bit like a marketing brand. You can't tell somebody what it is. Your customers express what it is because they engage with you. Same is true for culture. There are a couple of other interesting contributing factors. We are already at more than 50% of the workforce is 30 years of age or younger. And those 30 to 40 are looking at my generation going, I ain't doing it like that. And of course, the ones coming up behind them said, I'm not doing it like you're doing it. So who's doing what? Yeah, this tension in the workplace right now, it's not about generational gap. I mean, I remember that, right? I got into the workforce and my dad said, well, you need to do these sets of things. But I couldn't. It didn't fit. I couldn't fit in my skin. So what do we do about this? This other number over here about managers, 70% of what happens for the workforce is in middle managers. Now, I know management gets a bad name and we all want to talk about leadership like somehow that's an elevated thing. They are different. Managing is planning and organizing and marshaling resources and allocating them properly and then following through to be sure that things implement well. Leadership then comes in and creates the condition. It nourishes the soil and says, yes, you can. And yes, we will. And what's going to contribute to your success? It's both, leading and managing. It's never an or. This is what wholeness is about. And yet we have middle managers who are being eliminated from organizations right now because we think AI is going to replace them. There was a wonderful article from Google a couple of weeks back, and they said, well, what we figured out is that while our software engineers are no longer writing code, instead what they're doing is debugging code. So the job description just changed, but the same allocation of resources is necessary. Now, will that get better? Of course. All of the tech stack is going to get better and better and better. What does that mean? We can do more innovation. Managers can plan bigger projects because they've just acquired a whole nother set of personnel. It's a partnership between the human and the machine. It's not an or. Same wholeness story. And of course, one of the things I think we forget is the polycrises. It wouldn't let me do this without causing a spell check problem. But we have such an accelerating level of complexity. And the human brain can't absorb it all. 8 billion people on the planet can all know the same thing at the same time. This is what the pandemic showed us. Like, oh, it's overwhelming. Our bodies aren't meant to do that. So what is our coping mechanism? Some people disappear. Other people get into action. Other people wait for somebody to tell them which direction do I go in. In fact, one of the things that was reported in the end of the year global study, 52 countries that Gallup has been doing longitudinal studies about followers and what they expect from leaders. And this was really surprising to me, but hope was number one. 68% of respondents. Now, what is hope? They're defining it as optimism and leaders who provide a clear direction. Well, how do you do that when you're in the midst of polycrises? You do it by noticing. You do it by practicing unconditional curiosity. I don't have time today to do this in great depth, but just think about when's the last time you asked a question of one of your employees that you didn't have an agenda for? You were asking the question to find out if they were in agreement with you. Or you asked the question because you wanted to see if they could rise to the challenge of something you wanted them to do. And what did you step over? Knowing where the core motivation was for them. So, opening to what's emerging through others, this is another micro skill of presence, and ultimately building a collective view. I have a customer here in Saudi, a female CEO running an entrepreneurial business. And she has cousins who are sisters, so there's 3 women at the top of the house. After about a year of our coaching work, she said, we're ready to take us to the next level. I want to raise the level of impact that we're having. And they all got together and they did their strategy discussion and they reallocated their roles and they announced it to the team. You can probably see what's coming. It did not solve the problems they were having with people not knowing what to do and not following through and not delivering on the quality that they wanted. And what did they skip? There was no collective view. Now that sounds really simple. We can look in the rearview mirror and understand that. But what was in the way for them as a leader, each of them, to let go of having to have the answer and instead asking the question, what is wanted now? So you can do your market research, but ultimately, uniquely inside of each organization, they need to be able to take that research and say, and what is our way of manifesting that? What is the way that we can naturally and organically be with customers that is distinctive to us? No one can replicate it. We talk about competitive advantage all the time, and I'm like, but wait, it already exists inside your organization. Your job as a leader and as a manager is to unleash it. This is what being generative is all about. So why don't we do it? I just thought you might want to look at some numbers. I have this conversation multiple times a day. If you know it costs you $9.6 trillion in revenue, 9% of global GDP, to operate the way you are with fragmented accountability and I, me, instead of us and we, wouldn't you think that would get your attention to pause and do something a little different? Or maybe we could talk about incivility. We talked about psychological safety yesterday. Yes, of course, that's the rearview mirror. We can see people don't feel safe. How do I address it? What's my part? How am I part, cause, or agent of the experience that our workforce is having? This is the question as leaders we have to ask ourselves. SHRM put together a quarterly index instead of an annual index. That's where that number comes from. And it was shocking to them. 76% of respondents said they had personally experienced or witnessed an act of incivility within a 90-day period. The one that put tears in my eyes, 13% said daily. Wow. If that doesn't bring every leader in this room to your knees, I don't know what will. We cannot continue to condone that with our silence. And you know, I know that there's an awful lot of places where we say kindness and care and respect and being, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit detached is the way to be a compassionate leader. But in exit interviews, the employees will tell you, what I really needed was the truth. You told me everything was okay. You told me my work was good. I don't have a performance review that says there was a problem. But the truth is the discomfort was in the leader who couldn't deliver the message that said, this works and you're ready to go here. Or most of this works, but this piece, what do you experience with your customers? We're not telling the truth and they know it. So everybody begins to hide what's actually occurring. And the human psyche says, And so we start to misbehave. So if you think you're doing something kind and nice, check and see if it's you hiding from being able to tell the truth that actually would unlock someone's passion. Because nobody gets up in the morning to be terrible in their work, right? Is there anybody in this room who gets up and says, I'm going to go be cranky today? I don't think so. But the environment can cause them to be that way because they don't get to be their whole selves. And it's costly. So imagine what would happen, what your leadership could accomplish if you made connection a priority, and if you were curious to find out What is it that you see as growth for yourself? What is the impact you want to contribute to your team, to your colleagues, to our customers, to this industry, to society? I won't make you raise your hand, but ask yourself, when's the last time you checked in about how people feel about, let's say, planetary health? Or checked in and asked them about how they see their healthy community, or not, as the case may be. Every country I visit, and I've worked on all 6 continents, there's homelessness, there's poverty, there's less economic opportunity than we would like, right? There are so many things societally that our professional lives influence, but do we talk about it? No, it doesn't. It's not relevant to the business. Really? I can't figure out what we're doing in America, because we're creating the absence of a whole group of consumers, but I don't have a business if I don't have a consumer, and our consumer needs to have a job. And if there aren't any, you can see where this is going. We're not asking the right questions. So transformation, no matter how inspiring, always carries the weight of the adversity that people can feel. This is why hope was the number one. Trust was at 33%, by the way. Hope was at 68%. When we have so much complexity and so much accelerated intensity, we need leaders to pause, stay grounded, connect inside themselves to what matters to them, the passion they have to be a leader in the first place, and to show up with that humility and courage, to express what they know is their clear direction. I have an R&D team out of France who, when all of the terrorist stuff started, they were doing scenario meetings every 3 weeks. I finally just looked at her through the Zoom and I said, just stop. This is ridiculous. It's a moving target that you will never be able to predict. What is the thing you uniquely do the best? I don't think she talked for almost 5 minutes. And she said, this is exactly what the team's been saying to me. Why are we running all of these scenarios? We don't have time to do this. We have stuff in the pipeline. We need to be staying on that. Yes, exactly. That's their excellence. And all of this noise out here is the thing that we must choose to be present with what's here, what's on the inside, that has us choose to be in this role, in this company, in this industry, in this part of the world. That's presence. All right. It's nothing to do with position. Presence can be the person who, I think somebody said it yesterday, who cleans the floor in the hospitals. It was you, that's right. When that person can say, I cure cancer, and every other person can say that, now we know an organization that understands clear direction and how to be present with anybody that they come in contact with. Now, this is a little bit of an acronym because it helps our brains remember. These are some micro skills for you. I've periodically given you some open-ended questions so that you could tune into your own energy. Learn how to tune into the we. I can tell in the room that many of you are already going, I'm in overwhelm. What is she talking about? Good. Because that's what your workforce is going through. There's so much coming at them. Tune into the energy and allow yourself to embrace silence. There's more there than what your mind can work out. How many of you have done any kind of training in somatic coaching? Yeah, a few. Definitely a place to do a little deeper work. Learn to notice your body. When I went to college, they told me thoughts created, emotions created action. It didn't make any sense to me because I was an athlete as a girl. And it was always about the body first. And then I had to connect with my emotions so I could express myself on skates on the ice. So I knew that, but I discounted it because somebody smarter than me said it was the other way around. Only to come into coaching and to realize, oh, the body always knows before my brain does. My body feels a shiver. It catches my breath. A tear comes. And I realize I'm having an emotional experience. We saw it yesterday in the supervision panel. Beautifully modeled for you. And then my brain says, oh, something is happening here. Not what's happening, something is happening here. That if I can stay present with it just a little longer in my discomfort, I'm going to have a seed of something that I've never considered before. This is where innovation comes from. And so, asking a generative question, yes, open-ended. But as I said yesterday, it's not about the right question. It's about connecting it to the expression and the experience of the person you were with. That's what makes it the right question. Because that person recognizes that you are present with them completely, 100%. It's the emotional shifts, the energetic shifts, the language change, the change in pacing. These are all things that you will not recognize if you're not present first in yourself. And then available to see it in another and have it be the seed of the conversation that connects you to whatever you're working on. And that's what it means to mirror it back. All right, wrong button. I'm going to leave you with this because this is, I think we make it so hard to think about how to be better, how to show up in more of our authenticity. And this Scottish psychiatrist isn't living anymore, but I think this captures it. The range of what we think and do is limited by what we fail to notice. And because we fail to notice that we failed to notice, there's little we can do to change. Until we notice how failing to notice shapes our thoughts and deeds. This nation is in the throes of a tremendous transformation to 2030 and beyond. That's just the first step. And unless we notice what's happening every step along the way, we will get ourselves locked on a trajectory and miss how people are experiencing that transformation. It takes noticing, building our awareness through our questions, being with the energy of the we are with to determine what the next step is. Stay open to the experience of your own presence, and you will be open to the experience of everyone else's too. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Janet. It was wonderful. It was really wonderful.
I'm really not crying. This is dry air. Oh, my God. Thank you. Do you want to take a couple questions? Or?
Any questions, guys? Okay, we'll take دكتورة ماجدة, تفضلي.
Thank you very much, Jani. Just I want to ask you, it's a fact that not all of us are leaders. The employee are followers or they have the leadership skills. I want to know from you, how can a followers or great employee follow their leader by the tools that you mentioned?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Humility, courage, and presence. Even seasoned executives have a hard time sitting down with a CEO. We get a story in our heads that I couldn't possibly ask that. Oh no, I know that that's a subject that is, no. We're not talking about that. The same thing happens at every level. A brand new employee comes to work, and we put them through onboarding, and we show them where their desk is and how to use the phone and how to sign onto the computer, and we say, and here's your job description. Come and see me if you have any questions. And we expect for them to take initiative. So it starts with us as managers and leaders, that we start by asking some questions. What had you choose to be here? What are you finding most compelling about the purpose and the vision and the mission and the values and the principles of this organization, and be with them in that first 90 days to say, and how are you experiencing your colleagues and our customers and the work that you're doing? Is it in alignment? And what would you see that would be better? What would shift your emotional experience that would have you finding yourself going, oh, thank goodness I'm in the right place? We're not asking those questions. Adam Grant said the other day, why do we keep doing exit interviews? We should be doing stay interviews. This is what the question you are asking. Followers will step into leadership if given the opportunity to say, here's how I see the world. And my impact would be even greater if I could have this kind of support or this kind of opportunity. And oh, by the way, those of you that think the younger generation are entitled, well, they are entitled to opportunity. They're giving their time and energy to work in your organization. Why wouldn't you want to find out how they want to deploy their excellence? And they also need direction. It's like, okay, love the enthusiasm, and what did you notice about this interaction over here? Right? We have to give them the feedback. It's leader discomfort that doesn't give feedback, by the way. It's nothing to do with being afraid of the reaction of the employee. That generation says, if you don't give me feedback, I ain't staying. So, that's the answer.
Thank you. So, humanity, courage, and presence. Thank you, Ms. Harvey. الحضور، الإنسانية، والشجاعة. كده ختمت كلامها Ms. Janet. Thank you so much for your valuable speech and time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.